Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to this great talk. We are very happy to have it once more in collaboration with IO-Talent and benefit from the insights of college students from China. Today's subject is the main challenge of the 21st century, reducing inequalities within and among countries. And it's targeting SDG10, but of course we all know that all SDGs are linked to each other. Today we have three presenters. Cheng Zhiwei, Michael, currently studying in Law School of Shandong University. His field of interest is affirmative action. We also have Lei Wen, junior student, School of Software, Shandong University, majoring in software and minoring in law. Her team is currently studying the application of blockchain in knowledge sharing. Her focus is mainly on artificial intelligence, big data, and other science and technology. In the field of humanities and social science, she pays more attention on social hotspots and women's rights. And finally, we have Zhang Tiange, who is sophomore studying in the School of Nursing. Manuela Tortora, GREYCELSS Vice President, will conduct the session and will give us some information about how we're going to deal with it. Manuela, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. Yes, just not an instruction, but a recommendation to please write your question or comment on the right column that you have that is used for writing. You can open it in the chat button that you have at the bottom of your screen, so that I can organize a little bit the conversation, particularly because we have right now 35 participants here and more on the WeMeeting platform. And anyway, as we told, everything is being recorded, so you can see that later on the GREYCELSS website. The topic that we have today on inequalities in the framework of the SDG10 is extremely interesting, I think, but also very wide. And I think it was extremely wise to have three presentations that address three angles of the inequalities broad topic. Anyway, in the discussion, of course, we can go beyond the scope of the three presentations, and I can already tell you that they are very, very interesting, all of them. Just a little comment, an introductory comment on my side, as I was saying just minutes ago, talking to Xiaonan. The topic of inequalities at the multilateral level was defined in the General Assembly resolution launching the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs exactly 5 years ago in 2015. And it is the first agreed definition at the multilateral level of what inequality means within states and among states. The first time ever within the multilateral system that we have a definition of this sort. And in addition to that, some policy recommendations, guidelines, indicators, targets, instruments that go with the definition. The first attempt to have a definition at the multilateral level was, again, by the General Assembly of the UN in 1974 for the definition of inequalities among states only, not within states. But that did not result into something as complex as we have today, and certainly no instruments to follow up on that. And then the idea was abandoned altogether in the years after 1974. So now I will give immediately the floor to the three presenters. We will probably stop after each presentation so that we can collect some comments. I think, Johan, is that the way to go? And then continue with the second presentation, again, questions, and then the third one. Is that okay? Okay, so the first presenter, the floor is yours. I don't know who we have. Yonan, you can introduce probably the presenter.
Okay, thank you, Manuela. So we will have the first presenter, Tiange, and you can maybe introduce yourself more and then start your presentation.
Hello, distinguished teachers and dear fellow students. My name is Zhang Tiange, and you can call me Beryl, B-E-R-Y-L. and I'm from Nursing School of Shandong University. And today I'm going to introduce to you the Chinese policy facing disabled and the future outlook of our country's policy. So let's get started. Sorry, one more second. I have to. Okay. So today's topic is under the framework of SDG10, and the reason why I choose the disabled people is because recently we have a lot of emphasis on the racial and gender discrimination, and also a lot of protests and the activities, and we can see around the globe. And the right of the disabled, however, is less mentioned globally. And people with disability, they make up like an estimated 1 billion around the globe, and or to say 50% of the world's population. That's a really huge amount. And also the former president of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, emphasizes the importance of realizing the equality of disabled is very important. As you can see, it is written in Chinese on the screen. So that's the reason why I choose this topic. And so the contents of my speech today includes the Chinese policy and the United States policy and law. And thirdly is the conclusion. And the fourth is the UN suggestion, and fifth, the future outlook. So now let's get started. So firstly, I wanted to ask one question. What does the inequality exist when it comes to the, when we talk about the disabled people? Well, apparently it doesn't only exist between people with and without the disabilities. It also exists among country, especially between the developed and developing country, and also within country. Like in rural and urban area, we have different policies and situations. And then between gender, and because women are, of course, facing double discrimination. And then about racial, because immigrants and minority groups will just receive more discrimination. And lastly is about various types of disabilities, like the persons with intellectual and psychosocial disabilities will be discriminated like more than other groups. So for the topic today is under the framework of Sustainable Development Goal 10. I'm going to give a brief introduction of it. First, the definition is inequalities based on income, sex, age, disability, sexual orientation, race, class, ethnicity, religion, and opportunity continues to persist across the world. Within and among countries, we have to reduce the inequalities between those groups. And the targets that is related to my target group, the disabilities, it's 10.2 and 10.3 in the like 10 targets. So about 10.2 is to empower and promote the social, economic, and political inclusion of disability, and 10.3 is to ensure the equality opportunity and reduce the discriminatory laws and policies and practices, and promoting appropriate legislation and so on. So firstly, let's just introduce and analyze Chinese policy and services first. I just mentioned about the equal opportunities, and from my point of view, equal opportunities includes many parts. The main parts may be the job, education, and decision-making polity participants, and so on. So today, due to the lack of time, we are just going to focus on one point, that is the job. So the job can be divided into 3 parts as well. So it's about the training, service and aid, and opportunities. For that, disabilities are less educated than the normal people, so we have to give them proper and give them proper trainings for them to get jobs. So talk about training. This is written in Chinese, but I'm going to give you a brief introduction so it's easy to understand. What is written in this words that to improve the training of the disability people, disabled people, and this is the screenshot from the one of the most important policies recently published. However, we can see this is a screenshot I got from the Chinese Federal of Disability Persons with Disability, and that website, and we can see that not only it is just includes some of the news of different provinces that the news of policy just published, and also the time of the news. It's stopped by 2050, so it's not updated recently for about 5 years. So it's a little bit tardy for the website, and also to serve the disabled people. And then I searched on the internet for the cities, specific services. For that, every city have their different policies. And in my hometown, Jinan, we have I got news from the government of Jinan website, and it shows that in 2019, 6,000 vacancies out there for disability training. However, what did I mention on the website is that there are 123,800 disabled people in total in Jinan. So the vacancies is not enough for all the disabled people. And also, what mentioned in the news is that only urban residents can register to take part in the vacancy. So what about the rural areas? It means the rural residents don't really have chance to get trained. And then the last point of the news is the General Federation of the Disabled requires to establish spaces to promote employment. My research, the career of disabled people of China began like 100 years ago, but we have enough and abundant basis to promote employment in Jinan, which is the capital city of Shandong and second place of GDP in Shandong. So we can get a conclusion that we are late starters and we have to catch up first. We have to catch up quickly. And the next part is about the existing services and policies. The different colors of triangles means different emphasis, and the blue one is about relieving poverty, and this, and this. And the green one is about the blind, protection of the blind, and the red one is about women. So we can conclude that the focus of the recent policies is quite clear. This is all of the existing policies recently for the disabled. So yeah, that's the existing services. And now comes to the noticeable points is that we focus more on financial aids when it comes to the employment of the disabled, and as is the keywords on the screen. And there's one more statistics, that is the national employment rate in China is 10% for the disabled people. That means there are 83 million disabled persons. However, there are only just 10% of them are employed. And I think that that is not a really good statistics for the equality. So now comes to the American policy and services. What I'm trying to do is not to compare the Chinese ones and American ones and to prove anything. I'm just trying to find out what American is doing well and what we can learn. This is the catalog of the American official government website I found for the disabilities. They have a really clear and comprehensive catalog to offer the services for the disabled people. And they have a special part of caregiver support, which is we don't really have. And there are more screenshots from the website of American government. And the instruction is really clear. And I think clear instructions can help disabled people to seek for more jobs, because we can ask disabled people to seek for jobs like what university students are doing for seeking their essays. Yes, and this is the employment rate of the American disabled people, and the latest rate is 37.5%. That is not that much, because you can see on the screen that this is a comparison between the employment rate with disability and without disability. There is still a huge gap between with an American. And then it comes to the law. So the quota employment system and the proportion of an American of quota employment is 3% compared to the 1.5% in China. And then the law part, the federal law forbids discrimination and when it comes to employment. So use the forbid, the word of forbid. But when it comes to Chinese law, it comes to the verb of should, is what should do and is what forbid. So the difference between the two words is that the Chinese law doesn't have strong enforcement to ask the government and the companies to just protect the disabled people. So about conclusion. So the advantage of Chinese service and policies about facing the disabled people is that we focus on the financial aid first, which is really good because we have to meet the basic needs before we achieving something else. And then the second advantage is that companies and associations are playing a very important role. I don't really have many screenshots about that point, but when I'm searching for my PowerPoint, I can see that there are many associations are making efforts for the promoting the employment of disabled people. And about disadvantage, first is an unemployment rate is really high, and second is the social conflict and discriminations exist, and we can that is I think the most important part of the employment rate, because many companies and government departments, they don't really want the disabled people as their staffs because they're afraid the whole company will be like put into a kind of dangerous situation. I don't know. So I think the education should be just promoted to facing this problem. And then it's about the laws and regulations, as I've just mentioned before. And then it's the access to the job opportunities. Because when I'm searching, I found it's really hard to search for the job opportunities for the disabled people. Not to mention some people, they have maybe they will have visual problems, they can see things clearly. So maybe it will be harder for them to find job accesses. And then it's about not comprehensive. What I'm trying to express here is that the group, some of the group are not protected well, because on the our PowerPoint, the women and the blind and poverty are protected well because there are many policies targeting on them. But there are some other people who have intellectual problems or so on, they are not protected well. And then it's the lack of imperative. So we can conclude two keywords. First is we are still at the initial stage and we have a lot of things to perfect. And then is that we need more efforts on many aspects. Fourth is the UN suggestions. So firstly is to meet the equality of the disabled children and without the people with and without disabled, is that to get better information, and countries need to get and share that information about what is happening to people with disabilities and how laws and others are working for people with disabilities. And then it's about the information and training to make laws and service well work for disabilities, and just to offer them information like how to support and include people with disabilities when it comes to wars and other big problems like earthquakes and so on, and also good education for people with disabilities so that they can have better access for their jobs. And fifth is the future outlook. It is a kind of it is a policy about the Healthy China 2030. It is not that related to the employment of disabilities. However, it is the four terms are all related to the health protection of the disabled people, and it includes some medical assistance and rehabilitation and the public services and barrier-free facilities. That is all what China are trying to make progress. And what I'm trying to express today is not that my country are doing really bad in this area, is that I'm trying to just remind us that China is the second large, has second large GDP around the globe. So what we're doing, it's what I just showed before. So what about other countries around the world? What about some developing countries that are suffering from wars and from disasters and from earthquakes and so on? I think they will have an even worse situation. So the equality for disabled people is really a huge problem to solve, and we have to just hold each other's, and we have to work together and make efforts together so that we can have a bright future. And that is all of my presentation. Thank you very much.
May I ask one directly?
Alejandro, yes,
Yes.
we can barely hear you.
Well,
Better.
that's better. Well, thank you very much for this very thorough presentation. I noticed that there is an emphasis on the financial aid, and I was wondering if this is financial aid for the person, for the family, or for the companies, or for both. That's possibly one first question. And the second one is you stress the importance of employment, and you have many graphs and information about employment, but I wonder if before employment there is some help to access education, to access training, and to access transportation from house to school, from house to medical services, from house to work, because many times people with handicap, they have the capacity to work, but it's very difficult for them to get to work. And before work, of course, comes education and training. Can you say something about that?
Okay, thank you very much. So about the first question about AIDS, from my research, I found that most of the aids are targeting on individuals, which is the disability people themselves. However, there are also some like cutting fees and insurance and the tax, the cutting of tax for the families, which has the disability members, for the disabled members. So I think the financial aid part of what China is doing, it's pretty impressive. And of course, we need further, perfection, and we need some more consideration. But what we're doing now, it's like just focusing on the financial aid and to support them to get rid of the poverty and to have a better life. Yeah. And about the second question, so about the process before the employment, I just mentioned in the PowerPoint that there are some training process just before the employment part, and it's not that well equipped, and the policy is not that supportive. However, we have settled some some goals for the further improvement of the training for disabled people, and it can be divided into many just types of jobs, including massagers and cook and so on. Yes, and about its education you just mentioned. Well, according to my research, our China is now trying to realize the equality of education. That is, we send special children who can take the normal education with the other kids, and we send them to just normal schools and to the to have the classes with normal children. And for some children who need special education, we're doing something that is helping them. The government is doing something to help them to get into special school and get special help from the trained people, from the trained teachers. And also, personally speaking, I joined a non-governmental organization that is targeting on the education of special children in China. And what we're doing is to give them the online class once a week or twice or 3 times a week and so on, and to offer them some knowledge like Chinese and math and English, and also some health knowledges and psychological knowledges and so on. So that is what we're doing in just before the employment. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions and comments on this presentation? Because if it is not the case, we can move to the second one, and then if necessary, we come back on this topic. So who is our second presenter?
Yes, Zhiwei.
Okay.
Okay.
Good evening, dear teachers and classmates. The topic I want to discuss with you today is healthcare and inequalities in the context of COVID-19. And my speech today is divided into 3 parts, as you can see. The introduction and the illustration, and then the summary. So first of all, let's go to the first part. As my title says, my presentation today is based on which was presented in SDG10. So in today's society, there are many inequalities within our countries and among the countries, which are especially evident in the epidemic. In the United States, for example, the COVID-19 shutdown has had a huge impact on the economy, with jobless claims surging to record 3.3 million in late March. America needs an army of startups to help create jobs now. So as the think tank says, the policymakers should consider tax and regulatory reforms to stimulate both short-term recovery and long-term growth. But as you probably know, within America, for example, in Chicago, where Blacks make up 30% of the population, the death rate is 72%, and the figures are even more exaggerated in St. Louis, where Blacks make up 25% of the population, but 55% of the COVID-19 cases and more than 80% of the death. I think what makes the situation is that the persistent lack of the financial support in the African American communities, and which has worsened their health care situation. But sadly, most Black people lack health insurance, and Black Americans have lower health insurance coverage than white peoples and are less likely to have health insurance through their employers. And as for China, the epidemic has different degrees of negative impacts on three industries, but from my research, I found that the tertiary industry had the greatest impact. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, the proportion of people employed in the tertiary industry in China reached 55% in 2019, and the proportion of people employed in the tertiary industry in China has been increasing in recent years, but the epidemic has greater, so the epidemic has a greater negative impact on China's employment. In addition to this, at the worst hit region at the beginning of the epidemic, as you probably know, China still needs to solve the psychological problems of many people in China. This is from a point of view, because I think for the patients, they either survived or lost their families. And for the general public, the discrimination against the COVID-19 patients and the worst hit areas is more urgent. Like some patients may have suffered from AIDS, and although you can't like get AIDS from like eating with them, but people are still afraid of eating with them. So I think the discrimination still exists widely. And so there is still a long way to go. And for some countries in Africa, I think the falling commodity prices as a result of the outbreak of the epidemic could put financial pressure on countries such as South Africa. And African oil exporters are expected to lose $65 billion in revenue this year. And the fall in commodity prices and capital flight have led to an inevitable weakening of African currencies, which could bring financial instabilities to African countries. And as the analysts pointed out, that on the one hand, Africa needs huge funds to contain the spread of the epidemic, while on the other hand, the epidemic will continue to lead to a decrease in foreign direct investment in Africa, and the capital outflow, and also in the business difficult, and it will also bring business difficulties. And under the impact of these two factors, some African countries will not only have a significant impact on their economic development, but also may have huge fiscal deficits and trigger debt crisis. So therefore, unlike other countries, Africa may need assistance from other countries to span this crisis, not including like financial help and the medical help. At the same time, Africa is faced with severe food crisis, as I think this is different from other countries, because Africa has a population of 1.2 billion nutritional deficiencies, account for more than 20% of the whole population in Africa, and which is the world's nutritional deficiencies for the highest percentage of the area. And the coronavirus has proven to be especially deadly to the elderly or those with underlying diseases, including malnutrition, and novel coronavirus could cause disruptions in the food supply chain. And this is not the first time that a disease will cause the food crisis in Africa, like to date, the COVID-19 outbreak has not had a significant direct impact on the availabilities and prices of staple foods in affected regions, like globally, so we can still eat in our home. So this is the policy, and we still can enjoy our food, and we are not facing with the food deficiencies. But that is not necessarily the case in the sub-Saharan Africa. For example, the Ebola outbreak in 2014 caused a sharp increase in the price of the staple food in the affected countries in the West Africa. And so I think there may be a food deficiencies happen in Africa again. So this is because the economy reasons, I think, from my point of view. And so there are also large inequalities within each country, such as the gap between the rich and the poor. And each country has made corresponding policies. First of all, China is developing information and communications technology to achieve development goals in education, gender equality, and infrastructure, and to reduce the gap between rich and poor. And targeted poverty alleviation policies were adopted to build like the bridges and the roads in the remote mountainous poor areas, like my hometown Guizhou, to promote local economic development. And in America, the government reduces the cost of government benefits and also a massive tax cuts for corporations and the wealthy in order to reduce costs and to keep the capital industries in the United States so that employees will not lose their jobs, which is better for the country's economic development. And for Africa, although there is a gap between rich and poor, the more serious problem is poverty alleviation. So African countries increase their income by bringing the internal and external resources and seeking help from international organizations. And they are also transforming their economies to achieve rapid, diverse, and stable and inclusive growth. And they are trying to like boost their economy through this way. And last, I would like to say that we can see from the impact of different countries and the different policies that inequality still exists widely in our world. I hope that through our efforts, we can get rid of such inequalities as soon as possible and build a better future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This was extremely interesting, and particularly I appreciated your remarks regarding inequalities among countries and the policies that could address them, insofar as a short time allows you to say something about it. In Europe and in the US and in general, what we perceive in the media is a lot of focus on the impact of the pandemic and therefore the inequalities that are the result of the crisis, or in general. We focus on the domestic dimension. We talk about the impact and the policies to address the crisis at the domestic level, the national level. And we tend to forget, as you said very correctly in your presentation, that there is an international dimension with development policies and cooperation policies that have to be put in place to help the poorest countries. I don't know if this imbalance in the discussion between the domestic and the global level is also happening in the case of China. You also tend to focus to look at the domestic level more. The press in developed countries
Yes.
tends to focus on the domestic dimension, on the national dimension of the crisis and the national dimension of inequalities. And we tend to forget the international dimension, the need to help poorest countries. So I'm asking if it is also the case in the Chinese discussions on the impact and policies related to the crisis.
This China is like because I think this is the worst hit areas of the world first. So I didn't focus on the dimensions like from the global dimensions. I would like to say that because China is like suffering the most from the epidemic at the first, so we have many questions to be solved within the country. So I mainly make the comparisons within the countries, but not like globally. So this is my point and to make this presentation.
Yeah, that was clear enough. I was just asking beyond your presentation, if in general, in the public opinion and the discussions in China, if this global dimension to help poorest countries is an issue that is being addressed in the discussion. But oh, okay. And others, I don't know if you want also to open the floor to other people. In the meanwhile, I have a question regarding your presentation, the slide number 7, where you mentioned within the US policies that there is a tax break and tax cuts for wealthy people. And don't you think that these tax breaks and cuts for wealthy people will increase the inequalities within the US?
First of all, I think this policy will increase the gap between between rich and the poor, of course. But I think this is the policy based on the context of the development of America. Like there are many people trying to get out the Americas because of the political factors or other factors, of course. So I think this policy is mainly to hold these people in the country still and to make more people to still have job. I think this is not the perfect policy, but this is the best policy based on the economic context of the American now. So I think this is not maybe will increase the gap between the rich and the poor, but this is the only way to hold the companies and to hold the peoples in Americas and to still have the faith in America. And this is the best way, and this is the only way.
Okay, so I understand that you tend to agree on the US policy of tax cuts and breaks for rich people and rich companies. I don't know if there are comments on that point or on other issues of the presentation. We can also come back on that in a while at the end of the third presentation. Let's move to the third presentation. Sionan, who is the third presenter?
Yes, low one, please.
It's me. Can you see my screen? Okay, if you can hear me and see my screen, we can start now. Hello everyone, my name is Le Wen, majored in software engineering and minor in law. It's a great honor for me to speak at this conference discussing whether science and technology will increase inequality or weaken it. Here are my contents and the catalog. It contains 3 aspects. Firstly, I want to discuss a question with you. Does technology increase the inequality? Before our talking, I want to introduce a book to you here, Poor Economies, written by Nobel laureate in 2019. This book illustrates the reason of poverty and why we cannot get rid of it. It's really a good book, without any doubt. Authors write this book based on the view that every technological change intensifies the polarization between the rich and poor, and the development of science and technology will certainly make the upper class control more resources than before. I can't help myself questioning it. Does or will technology lead to greater inequality? To solve my puzzle, I read a lot of books and search online for people's opinions. The answers mostly lead to yes. It's strange but reasonable that the mainstream idea is yes. Exactly as the book says, they think the development of technology has intensified the gap between the rich and the poor. On one hand, under the trend of globalization, the developed countries get developed by virtue of their own scientific advantages, while backward countries undertake lower income, high cost, and high pollution labor. On the other hand, the help to economic income of ordinary people is far less than that of the high income group. So take blockchain as an example. It's one of the most popular projects in the big data industry in the past 2 years. To help everyone to understand this word better, because it's some word that most people not touched. Let's imagine this thing. Today you want to borrow $10 from me. To ensure the safety, I must ask the notary to be a witness or write IOU. But using the blockchain, we don't even need to ask. Someone or write anything down. Because when you and I have a loan account floor like this, all computers will automatically write a piece of data. I lend $10 to you. This method is the core of blockchain. I have a team, and my team and I are recently studying about the application of the blockchain in knowledge sharing. The blockchain is just the direct exchange between people. During this period, we find that the more resources you have, the more autonomy and priority you can enjoy in the exchange process, which indeed proves that technology rarely increases inequality. However, I like taking an unusual way to consider questions. I am a born optimist and always try to solve problems, even most people say it can be true. I invite everyone here to look at the screen. Here are two phones' names, shapes, product coefficients, and functions. Now we compare their prices. First one, iPhone 11 Pro, 64GB, 5.8 inches and its functions. Next one, Redmi 7A, 32GB, 5.45 inches. Both phones can listen to music, locate yourselves, take photos, and do face recognition using artificial intelligence. Now we compare their prices. The difference between the two is nearly 18 times. So put it another way, can we say even the rich can have better experience, but the poor man can also enjoy the fun of technology? There's another chart shows the GDP per capita growth and technology. The horizontal axis is the time and the related scientific and technology revolution, and the vertical axis is the trend chart of global GDP growth. In fact, it's obvious that with the progress of science and technology, the global GDP has risen rapidly. In other words, the problem of inequality is not in the technology, but in other things. So with the development of science, I'm more convinced that as long as reasonable regulation is adopted in the future world, technology will gradually reduce inequality. Here are my reasons. First of all, there is no way to stop the progress of science and technology. Future is coming, so the future is not wrong, but the goal of using technology should be reset. Technology should be said as something that everyone can use, but the goal of even artificial intelligence sounds like a big thing, but the face recognition, fingerprint recognition, and intelligent voice system have been used in our mobile phones. During the outbreak of epidemic, infrared temperature measurement technology was used in China everywhere, which is also a kind of AI. In such background of scientific and technological progress, it seems that the inequality among race, gender, and age can be erased. My major is software engineering, which belongs to the category of computer. Pictures on the screen is just a little of my program written by Java. People used to be unfamiliar with this machine. In the last century, only researchers can use the computers, but now ordinary people as me can use computer to have this speech. Here is Lamulus of my college founded the company called CodeMao, which has helped many 7-year-old children learn common programming. And this kind of programming teaching has been developing very mature among the Northern Europe, as I know. To a certain extent, the knowledge of such deep technology also reflects the technology is smoothing the inequality brought about age. So as mentioned above, how to solve the problem of inequality brought about by technology is to make rational use of science and technology. Here are some of my personal suggestions for your reference. First, address persistent inequalities in technological capabilities to catch up with more advanced economies and thus reduce income inequalities among countries. Countries with no technological capabilities should consider strengthening their technological learning through public policies, which should focus on the adoption, adaptation, and diffusion of existing technologies rather than on investing in the aging of R&D. Next, promote regional and international cooperation to exploit technology dividend. Regional cooperation platforms can also be useful in the exchange of expertise and knowledge services that reduce capacity inequalities among countries. But this method will require further support from more advanced economies. Moreover, address technology runs to mitigate their impact on extreme inequality. Policymakers need to address the conditions that have allowed extreme accumulation of wealth, including enforcing competition laws, strengthening intellectual property protection, and bargaining power of workers and consumers. Last but not least, introduce more inclusive technology and innovation policies. While the market is a key determinant of technology development, governments have influence in the direction of technology change. I believe that. At the end, I want to share my favorite science fiction to all of you. This book is called Vagabonds, written by Hugo Prize winner Hao Jingfang. It depicts the state of technological prosperity under two different systems of Mars and Earth. On Mars, based on the open state of all knowledge and technology, everyone can explore and create inventions in the fields they are interested in. On the Earth, the core of science and technology is still mainly concentrated on a small number of scientists, but all children on Earth can use them and experience different advanced technologies in a certain resources background. So in the future, whether our countries choose a system of Mars or a balance like Earth, technology will always serve the development of mankind, and the blessing of knowledge and technology will ultimately benefit everyone in the world. As a science and technology advocate, I always believe that technology will reduce the inequality of human society. That's all, thank you. And before professors ask me questions, I have some questions to ask.
Sure, go ahead, please.
So professors, when I do the study about the influence of technology on inequality, I actually have no experience on this one. So can you share with us about the experience of this topic and your opinions of these questions? The question is my title. Does the technology increase inequality or weaken it? It's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, it is a very good question. And I think that some of our GREYCELSS members are following precisely the UN discussions on the impact of technology at the intergenerational level, meaning that we, the seniors, are certainly a little bit affected so far, apparently, regarding the technological progress. Maybe Alejandro, you would like to say something in this regard to what is being discussed?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Manuela. And thank you very much, Lewen, for this beautiful presentation. I have a list of questions. We could spend hours on this. Many things. I think that the answer to the question is technology going to increase or decrease inequalities? I think the answer is yes. As silly as it sounds, I think it will increase some inequalities and it possibly will decrease some inequalities. I make the difference, a clear difference, between countries and sectors creating technology and those who are using technology. If I'm correct, the statistics have not changed too much. I think 95% of all technology that we use in the world right now is created in the United States. Something like 4% is created in Europe and 1% is created in the rest of the world. So as long as one country, one source of intelligence creates it, it's going to create disparities. I think it's unavoidable. On the other hand, technology has always been there. I am from Mexico and I have always admired the Maya's construction. I'm an admirer of the constructors of in Egypt. I just can't believe each time I see records of the Romans, how do they build and how did they use technology all over the world? And technology has always existed. I think you're perfectly right to mention, to highlight that it's technology by itself has always existed. Even inventing the wheel was a great achievement of technology, but it depends on the use, on the accessibility that we use of that technology. The issue is that the speed of technology is now going too fast. It takes hundreds of years to develop things. Now it seems that in 1 year, things become obsolete. And in particular, elderly people, as us retired officials at GREYCELSS, things are going too fast. I thought I knew everything about the iPhone when I had my iPhone 3, and very rapidly it was obsolete and I had to go to iPhone 5, iPhone 7, iPhone 9, now iPhone 11, and there are so many things. And there is also a clear distinction, I think, and that's why I don't have an affirmative response. is that technology is serving in many cases for essential things, for things that advance development, and in many, many cases, it's used for nonsense, to share my breakfast with people at the other end of the world. It's nice, and to collaborate, but possibly that was not advancing humanity. If it's used to make a medical diagnosis from in a hospital 200 kilometers away, that is fantastic. But it's just for sharing my breakfast with someone in Argentina or in Mexico, that's not that useful. And I think that we are focalizing right now in the fun of technology, in the accessibility of fun technology, not necessarily creating goodwill or better living conditions. So the thing is that better living conditions are not yet a good business. So I think when better conditions and development will become a better business, and those who are doing business with technology realize that using it, and I think they are doing that, things will start to change. So it's a very, very vast subject, and thank you very much again for a beautiful presentation, Luan.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, thank you. I have an interesting question here from Cecile that I would like to complement. Cecile is asking what measures are taken in China to ensure equal access to the benefits of technology, the dividends of technology that you mentioned in your presentation. So access regardless of age, origin, social status, and so on. And in this regard, you mentioned two key words in your presentation, which is reasonable regulation to ensure the good management of technology and technology changes. What do you mean by reasonable regulation? If you could elaborate on that, please.
Firstly, in China, some poor men will get buy machines with some discount. So this discount is approved by the countries. So I think the poor can use use less money than the rich to buy something that's expensive and technological. In my speech, I said the regulations, reasonable regulations, is just for example, we can give out some technology products to the men that their money is not so much, or we can give them some chances to use it and make them to experience the fun of that. And also for another example, we can share the technology, the knowledge of technology to everyone, and they can do their experiment and their studies on that, so they can also enjoy the fun of the technology. This is my point. This is my view.
So if I understand correctly what you just said, you do not have an issue, as we have in Europe and in the US and other places, with intellectual property of technology. As Alejandro mentioned seconds ago, the technology is produced at the world level, mainly by the US and some other countries, but it is also protected by intellectual property laws at the domestic level and rules at the international level. You do not have an intellectual property issue in China protecting the production of technology?
No. Firstly, I think in the US or some European countries, I don't have much studies on that, so I can't come to a conclusion so quickly. And I think there are still some problems and shortage in my country, China, and this is what science. This is some scientists and men in government should do. So I think I can't come into conclusion so quickly. Just some point of my view. Did I say that clearly?
Yep, okay. And what about the reasonable regulation that you mentioned in your presentation? Can you elaborate a little bit on what you mean by that?
The reasonable regulations I mentioned in the speech. Do you want to say, did you mean I should say more about that?
What is a reasonable regulation in the context of representation? Concretely, an example of a reasonable regulation.
Let me think about this.
Access to education level.
I think technology, some reasonable regulations on technology to solve the inequality will focus on the gap between the rich and the poor. Because the rich can easily buy the products, especially the expensive products with much science and technology efficiency in there, and the poor cannot really buy it. But I think the current market of China has a lot of products. Not only China, but also the world have many products for them to choose from that. So I think the policies and the regulations to protect this should concentrate on how to make sure both the rich and poor have the access to the products. This is my view.
Okay, thank you. We have a question here regarding the context of inequalities, which are obviously not the same all over the places. Economic, poverty, education level, degree of happiness, family life, creativity, participation, capabilities to communicate, interact, all these things are the context of addressing the inequalities. Enrique, I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit more on your question, Enrique?
Yes. Thank you. Are you listening? Are you listening?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So thank you. It was very interesting. The presentation by Le Weng. Congratulations. But I think the concept of inequality should be elaborated with respect to what, in what context. We presume that you are talking about economic level, economic power, economic condition, but we also have to consider many other aspects, such as level of education of people. What is the consequence of technology regarding levels of education? What is the degree of happiness of people? Are they more happy or they are more unhappy with technology? Or family life, are they devoting more time or less time because of changes in technology, time to family, life enjoyment, creativity? Are people devoting more time with technology or less time with technology? Participation in civic and social issues, ability to communicate, etc. So on many aspects, the answer should be found. And I think, I agree, and I like very much the position of Le Wen, that she is very positive with respect to technology, so I am. But of course, there are doubts, especially concerning unemployment created by robotization, and also excess of time devoted to the internet. But one can find people who claim that there will not be unemployment due to technology. Of course, this has to be followed by regulations, by social measures regarding work, time, employment, etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. After hearing your comment, I find that my thinking may be a little simple, because I think not very, I can't think all aspects of this question. So I will try think again and do more research. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Lewen. And I thank you, Enrique, because he is exactly in the line of what I was thinking about reasonable regulation, and what do you mean by that, and what sort of social measure has to be put in place to ensure, as Enrique said, that it is really access for everybody for the benefit of everybody, which is a difficult task. We have to agree on that also. It's not easy. I have Angela here from the Shandong University. Angela, you have the floor if you want to open your mic and maybe your video, please. Angela?
Yeah, please.
Go ahead, please, with your mic.
Thank you very much. And hello, Lowen, and thank you for your excellent speech. And I have two questions.
Yeah, please.
The first question, yeah, and the first question is that in your PowerPoint, I can find the sentence, technology is created to serve for mankind. And in my opinion, I think, more and more people are addicted to the mobile phone, and there is increasingly concern that technology will control the world. And I want to ask that, what do you think of this perspective?
Okay. Okay.
And,
You first.
and this is the first question. Yeah, you can answer this before I ask the second.
Yeah. Firstly, I say that technology is serving for mankind. It's my own point, because I think technology is us to develop this, and we control this now. And in the future, you just mentioned is about technology, and I say more clearly, it may be the AI, right?
Yeah.
All other things.
Yeah.
I think about AI will control this world or not. These questions is being discussed by many experts and scholars, and they can't get the same conclusion. In my opinions, it will not. Firstly, we must believe that we have the ability to control it. First reason is we made the robot, we made the AI, and we control its electricity, we control its programming, we control its core. So I think with the development of AI, our human beings, our knowledge is also been developing. So I think we should be optimists. This is my first reason. Second reason is AI is being developing. It can't be stopped, and we can't just say we just stop the research on the AI, on the robot. So we must now we can do is to do more research on this and do more talk about this and put our concentration on the intelligence of the robot. So it's these are my opinions on your questions. Thank you. I hope I can share with you with this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lewen. One last question, and it is from Lotus Zhu, and I will give you the floor. And then we will close this interesting debate. And as Alejandro said, we could stay here for hours. So Lotus, please, you have the floor. What is your question?
Hi, teacher and classmates. I am Lotus, now majoring in English in Shandong University. Well, the topic of SDG10 and reducing inequality in all aspects is extremely worth discussing. And I truly respect the hard work who have been struggling for reasonable rights of the vulnerable groups. But nowadays, there's a trend which has raised my attention. For example, extreme feminism. Those who are extreme feminists are being to act as a sexist against male. When it comes to males' interests, they advocate equality between men and women. When they talk about women's interests, they change their identities as the vulnerable groups and make the male shoulder all the responsibilities. How would we avoid overcorrection on our way of fighting for rights for the vulnerable groups? I'm looking forward to your answer. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I don't know if there are volunteers to address the question. In the meanwhile, I think as far as I am concerned, all sort of extremism is always a wrong attitude. Whatever is the topic and whatever is the policy and whatever is the context, having an extremist, intolerant position, dogmatic position is always a mistake that leads, well, nowhere, leads to failures rather than progress. So that applies also to the examples that you mentioned on feminists and on many, many other things. But I don't know if there are other views. If there are, I don't think we have extremist feminists here on the screen. Probably not.
Well, I don't know either.
I don't think so, but certainly no, it is worth to think about what you said. I mean, very seriously, because we have to manage these extremes, whatever they are. They can be black or white or one direction or the other one. They said all extremes are bad. And it's not always easy. I mean, we see that in Europe with another topic, which is on nationalism, which also leads to other sort of extremes, which I think even much more dangerous than those that you mentioned on the feminist women and so on, women-male differences. But certainly it is not easy at the political level to manage properly these extremist positions that are usually the result of ignorance, I must say. Well, there is an interesting comment from Shaw. I think it is a comment, not a question, addressed to everybody on the importance of the technological progress for Chinese development, and I think everywhere. And then this is also EU that is saying that in the question of intellectual property in China, China is trying to build up more comprehensive legal system to protect intellectual property, and the government has been put in a lot of efforts in this area. yeah, indeed, intellectual property is an issue. It is a very sensitive one, particularly in the context of the pandemics, where we will have to address the pandemic, the COVID-19, with some sort of vaccine that is also closely related to the intellectual property of the pharmaceutical industries all over the world. Alejandra, I would like to give you the floor for some closing remarks because we are very close to the limit of our time available, unfortunately. So over to you, Alejandro, and thank you everybody for your presentations and discussions and participation and everything. You're just a wonderful group.
Well, thank you very much, Manuela, and thank you very much to our presenters today, Cheng Zhiwei, Zhang Tiange, and Li Wen. And your presentation was really, really very nice, and you walked us from healthcare, technology, the disabled, and we had a very interesting discussions. I think that you're optimistic in many ways, but I think it will depend on what we will be doing now. And one of the last questions, I think it's very important, technology and rights. And this is linked in a way to the intergenerational dialogue that we're going to have in November. And I hope that IO-Talent will be able to participate in that. Is that what is the role of civil society and all the manifestations and all the extremists and non-extremists that go on the street? What is the impact on policy making? And I think that that impact in many ways is linked to technology. I remember my parents, I'm a baby boomer. I was born after World War II. And I remember my parents, when I was a child, they had to wait weeks to get news from what happened in World War II in Europe, and frequently wait till that appeared at the movies because there were no television at that time. And the thing now is that if someone, extremists or not, go to any street in any part of the world, the rest of the world will know it in the next few seconds. Breaking news, this is happening there. So in a way, I think we all are living now in a crystal house where transparency is clearer, transparency is getting the norm. And if you see when a particular government does not like what's going on in the streets, the first thing that they do is to cut technology so that the access is not working. So I think indeed technology is very much linked to human rights, to healthcare, and to disabled people. And as you know, in some social security legislations, elderly people are considered like disabled because we have lost many of our capacities. So thank you very much for a very, very interesting, great talk. This is the last one before the break in the summer. We will be coming back in November. We will resume our activities possibly in the second week of September. Second week of September. And of course, we will be extremely happy to organize future sessions with IO-Talent, with so talented participants. Thank you very much to all of you. And if you have friends or anybody who would like to see this recording, it will be available as from tomorrow morning in our GREYCELLS website. Thank you very much to everyone and see you after the summer. Have a great time and stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you. Please have a great holiday.
Excuse me, Xiao Nianli, would you like to say something before closing this session?
What I would say is so thanks. So it will be okay. And please have a great rest.
Thank you to you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.